Everyone ignored the sick old lady, except the black girl who ended up marrying her millionaire son. It was a cold, rainy evening in the heart of the city. Commuters rushed past with their umbrellas open and their eyes fixed on their phones, too busy, too tired, too consumed by their own worlds to notice anything beyond themselves. The traffic light turned red, and dozens of people crowded the crosswalk, waiting impatiently for their turn to cross. That's when she appeared. An elderly woman, frail and trembling, her grey coat soaked through from the rain, leaning heavily on a wooden cane as she tried to navigate the busy intersection. She moved slowly, each step a struggle, her thin hand shaking as she gripped the cane for balance. The light turned green, and the crowd surged forward, flowing around her like water around a stone. Some people glanced at her and quickly looked away. Others pretended not to see her at all. No one stopped. No one reached out. No one cared. The old woman stumbled, nearly losing her balance as she stepped off the curb. Still, the crowd kept moving, kept rushing, kept ignoring. Everyone walked by. Everyone except one person. Lydia, a young black nurse in her mid-20s, had just finished a brutal double shift at the hospital. Her feet ached, her scrubs were damp, and all she wanted was to get home, collapse on her couch, and sleep. But when she saw that elderly woman about to fall, something inside her refused to let her keep walking. She dropped the grocery bags she was carrying and rushed forward, catching the woman just before she stumbled into the street. What Lydia didn't know in that moment, as she held this stranger's trembling hand and called for an ambulance, was that this one act of kindness would change her entire life. Because the woman she saved wasn't just anyone. She was Eleanor Hayes, the mother of one of the wealthiest men in the country, and her son was about to fall deeply, irrevocably in love with the compassionate nurse who saw his mother when no one else did. Before we continue, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from and what time it is. And if you're new to this channel, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because Lydia's story is going to remind you that kindness is never wasted. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. The rain fell harder as Lydia steadied the elderly woman, guiding her gently away from the rushing traffic and toward the relative safety of the sidewalk. The woman was lighter than Lydia expected, her frame so thin and fragile it felt like she might break under the slightest pressure. Up close, Lydia could see just how pale she was, her lips tinged with blue, her breathing shallow and labored. "Ma'am, are you okay?" Lydia asked, her nurse's instincts kicking in immediately. She scanned the woman's face, noting the cold sweat on her forehead despite the chill in the air, the way her eyes seemed unfocused. The elderly woman tried to smile, but it came out as more of a grimace. "I just need to rest for a moment, dear. Just a moment." Lydia looked around desperately. There was a bus stop bench about 20 feet away, partially sheltered by a small overhang. She guided the woman there slowly, supporting most of her weight, talking to her the whole time to keep her conscious and alert. "What's your name?" Lydia asked as she helped her sit down. "Eleanor," the woman whispered. "Eleanor Hayes." The name meant nothing to Lydia. She was too focused on the medical signs in front of her. Eleanor's breathing was getting worse, more shallow. Her skin was clammy. These were symptoms Lydia recognized all too well from her years working in the emergency room. "Eleanor, I'm Lydia. I'm a nurse. I need you to stay with me, okay? Can you tell me if you're having any pain?" Eleanor's hand went to her chest. "A little. It's hard to breathe." That was all Lydia needed to hear. She pulled out her phone and dialed 911, her voice calm and professional as she gave the dispatcher their location and described Eleanor's symptoms. "Possible cardiac event," she said. "Elderly female, difficulty breathing, chest pain, altered mental status." While they waited for the ambulance, Lydia took off her own jacket and draped it over Eleanor's shoulders. She was already soaked to the bone from her shift and the rain, but this woman needed warmth more than she did. "The ambulance is coming," Lydia said softly, taking Eleanor's hand. It was ice cold. "You're going to be okay. Just stay with me." Eleanor looked up at her with eyes that were surprisingly clear despite her condition. "You're very kind. Most people just walked right by." "I know," Lydia said quietly, "but I'm here now. You're not alone." Around them, people continued to rush past, barely sparing them a glance. A few looked over with mild curiosity, but no one stopped to help. No one asked if they needed anything. They just kept walking, kept scrolling on their phones, kept living their lives as if the struggling woman on the bench didn't exist. Lydia had seen this kind of indifference before. She'd grown up in a neighborhood where people looked out for each other because they had to, where community meant something because survival depended on it. But out here, in the polished heart of the city with its glass towers and expensive stores, people had forgotten how to see each other. The ambulance arrived within 8 minutes, though it felt like an eternity. 2 paramedics jumped out, and Lydia quickly briefed them on Eleanor's condition, using the medical terminology that came naturally to her after years of training and practice. "Are you family?" one of the paramedics asked as they loaded Eleanor onto the stretcher. "No," Lydia said. "I just found her trying to cross the street. She was alone." The paramedic nodded, already focused on getting Eleanor stabilized. They worked quickly, efficiently, hooking her up to oxygen and starting an IV line. As they prepared to load her into the ambulance, Eleanor reached out and grabbed Lydia's hand with surprising strength. "Don't leave me," she whispered. "Please." Lydia looked at the paramedics, who nodded. "You can ride with us if you want." Lydia didn't hesitate. She climbed into the ambulance, still holding Eleanor's hand, her grocery bags forgotten on the sidewalk. She'd call her younger brother Marcus later to explain why she was late. Right now, this woman needed someone, and Lydia couldn't walk away. During the ride to Metropolitan General Hospital, the same hospital where Lydia worked, Eleanor drifted in and out of consciousness. Lydia kept talking to her, keeping her engaged, monitoring her responses. The paramedics worked with practiced efficiency, and Lydia stayed out of their way while still providing comfort to the frightened woman. "Do you have family we can call?" Lydia asked during a moment when Eleanor seemed more alert. "My son," Eleanor said weakly. "Lucas, but he's out of the country. Business." "We'll find him," Lydia assured her. "What's his number?" Eleanor tried to remember but couldn't focus. "In my phone. My purse." Lydia found the elegant leather purse that had been brought along with Eleanor. Inside was an expensive smartphone. It was locked, but Eleanor managed to give her the code with trembling fingers. Lydia scrolled through the contacts and found an entry labeled Lucas, son. She made a mental note to have the hospital contact him once Eleanor was stabilized. When they arrived at the hospital, Lydia stayed with Eleanor through the intake process, providing information where she could and filling in the gaps for the ER staff. She recognized some of her colleagues and explained the situation quickly. "I found her on the street. Possible MI, difficulty breathing, chest pain. She's been in and out of consciousness." The ER doctor nodded and immediately began barking orders. Eleanor was whisked away to a treatment room, and Lydia finally stepped back, letting the medical team do their work. She stood in the hallway, suddenly aware of how exhausted she was. Her shift had ended 3 hours ago. She was soaking wet, freezing cold, and she'd left her jacket with Eleanor. Her feet hurt, her back ached, and she desperately needed to get home. But something kept her there. She waited in the hallway, checking her phone. 7 missed calls from Marcus. She called him back, quickly. "Lydia, where are you?" "I was getting worried." "I'm still at the hospital," Lydia said. "I'm sorry. I should have called. I found someone who needed help and I rode in the ambulance with her." Marcus sighed, but she could hear the affection in his voice. "Of course you did. That's so you. Are you okay?" "I'm fine. Just tired. There's leftover pasta in the fridge for dinner. I'll be home as soon as I can. Be safe, sis. Love you." "Love you too." Lydia hung up and leaned against the wall, closing her eyes for just a moment. She should leave. She should go home, take a hot shower, eat something, sleep. Eleanor was in good hands. The hospital would contact her family. Lydia's job here was done, but she couldn't make herself walk away. About 40 minutes later, one of the ER doctors came out. Dr. Chen, a woman Lydia had worked with many times. "Lydia, you're still here. I just wanted to make sure she's okay," Lydia said. "The woman I brought in, Eleanor Hayes." Dr. Chen smiled. "She's stable. You got her here just in time. Looks like she was having a cardiac episode. We've got her on oxygen and we're running tests, but I think she's going to be fine. Good catch on your part." Lydia felt relief wash over her. "That's good. That's really good." The nursing staff said you rode in the ambulance with her. You're not family? No, Lydia admitted. I just found her on the street. Everyone else walked by, and I couldn't just leave her. Dr. Chen shook her head. You're one of the good ones, Lydia. We need more people like you in this world. Lydia smiled tiredly. Can I see her? Just for a minute? She's sleeping now, but you can peek in if you want. Dr. Chen led Lydia to one of the private ER bays. Through the window, Lydia could see Eleanor lying in the bed, looking much better than she had on that bench in the rain. Her color was improving, her breathing steady with the help of oxygen. She looked peaceful. Lydia stood there for a long moment, watching the gentle rise and fall of Eleanor's chest, and felt a sense of rightness that she couldn't quite explain. This was why she became a nurse. Not for moments like this, exactly, but for the principle behind it. The idea that everyone deserved to be seen, to be cared for, to matter. Finally, she turned to leave. It was time to go home. But as she walked through the ER toward the exit, she had no idea that her life had just changed in ways she couldn't possibly imagine. That the frail woman sleeping in that hospital bed wasn't just anyone. That her simple act of kindness had set in motion a series of events that would transform everything. Sometimes the smallest moments create the biggest ripples, and Lydia's moment of compassion on a rainy street corner was about to become something much, much bigger than she ever could have dreamed. The next morning, Lydia woke up exhausted despite sleeping for 10 hours straight. Her body was finally catching up with all the overtime she'd been pulling, all the double shifts and extra hours she'd taken to make sure she and Marcus had enough to live on. She dragged herself out of bed and made breakfast for Marcus, who was already up and dressed for school. At 15, he was becoming more independent, but Lydia still insisted on having breakfast together when she could. It was one of the few routines they'd maintained since their parents died 7 years ago. You got in late last night, Marcus said, pouring himself orange juice. Everything okay with that lady you helped? She's stable, Lydia said, scrambling eggs. They admitted her for observation, but she should be fine. Marcus shook his head, smiling. Only you would spend your day off riding in an ambulance with a stranger. I wasn't going to just leave her there, Marcus. Everyone else walked right by. I know, Marcus said. That's what makes you different. Mom would be proud. Lydia felt the familiar ache in her chest at the mention of their mother. 7 years hadn't made it easier, just different. Their parents had died in a car accident when Lydia was 19 and Marcus was 8. Lydia had been in her second year of nursing school, and suddenly she'd become a guardian, a parent, a provider. She'd thought about dropping out, getting a full-time job to support them. But her mother's sister, Aunt Claudia, had helped them through that first terrible year, and Lydia had managed to finish her degree while working part-time and raising Marcus. It hadn't been easy. It still wasn't easy. But they'd survived. More than survived. Marcus was thriving in school, talking about college, dreaming about becoming an engineer, and Lydia had a career she loved, even if the pay barely covered their expenses. You working today? Marcus asked, pulling her from her thoughts. Yeah, evening shift. I'll be home by midnight. Want me to make dinner? Lydia smiled. That would be great. Just nothing too ambitious, okay? Remember what happened last time you tried to make lasagna? Marcus laughed. That was one time, and the fire was very small. After Marcus left for school, Lydia cleaned up and got ready for her shift. She put on fresh scrubs, tied her hair back, and headed out into another grey day. Metropolitan General Hospital was a large public hospital that served a diverse community. It wasn't fancy like some of the private hospitals uptown, but it had a good reputation and a staff that genuinely cared about their patients. Lydia had worked there since graduating nursing school, and despite the long hours and modest pay, she couldn't imagine working anywhere else. Her shift started at 3, but she arrived early as she always did, checking in with the nurses she was relieving and getting updates on the patients in her section. She was assigned to the cardiac unit today, which made her think of Eleanor. On impulse, during her break, Lydia checked the hospital's patient registry. Eleanor Hayes had been moved out of the ER and into a private room in the VIP wing. Lydia had only been to that wing a handful of times. It was where wealthy patients stayed, in rooms more like hotel suites than hospital accommodations. She shouldn't visit. Eleanor wasn't her patient. Lydia had done her part, but something drew her there anyway. The VIP wing was on the top floor, and the difference was immediately obvious. Thick carpets instead of linoleum, artwork on the walls, a quiet, peaceful atmosphere instead of the organized chaos of the regular floors. Lydia felt out of place in her worn scrubs and sensible shoes, but she found Eleanor's room number and knocked softly on the door. "Come in," a weak but warm voice called. Lydia pushed open the door and stepped inside. The room was beautiful, with a large window overlooking the city, comfortable furniture, and fresh flowers on every surface. And there, sitting up in bed, looking infinitely better than she had the night before, was Eleanor. Eleanor's face lit up when she saw Lydia. "My angel, you came back." Lydia smiled, moving closer to the bed. "I work here. I just wanted to check on you and see how you're feeling." "So much better, thanks to you," Eleanor said. She reached out and took Lydia's hand. "The doctors told me what happened. They said if you hadn't gotten me here when you did, I might not have made it." "I'm just glad I was there," Lydia said simply. "So am I, dear, so am I." Eleanor studied her with kind, intelligent eyes. "Lydia, was it? What a beautiful name." "Thank you, ma'am. Please call me Eleanor. And sit. Tell me about yourself." Lydia knew she should get back to her floor, but something about Eleanor's genuine warmth made her want to stay. She sat in the comfortable chair beside the bed. "There's not much to tell," Lydia said. "I'm a nurse here. I have a younger brother I'm raising. We get by." "You're raising your brother? How old are you, dear?" 26. Marcus is 15. Our parents passed away when I was in nursing school." Eleanor's expression filled with sympathy. "Oh, my dear, that must have been so difficult." "It was," Lydia admitted. "But we managed. We're doing okay now." They talked for nearly 30 minutes. Eleanor asked about Lydia's life, her work, her dreams, and Lydia found herself opening up in a way she rarely did with strangers. There was something about Eleanor that felt safe, maternal, genuine. Eleanor, in turn, shared stories about her life, about her late husband Robert, who had built a successful real estate business from nothing, about her son Lucas, who now ran the company, about her loneliness since Robert had passed 5 years ago. "Lucas is a good son," Eleanor said, "but he works too much. He's forgotten how to really see people, I think. He's so focused on business, on success, on maintaining what his father built. He's lost sight of what really matters." "It must be hard for him," Lydia said, "living up to that legacy." "It is," Eleanor agreed, "but I worry about him. He needs someone who can remind him what's important, someone with a good heart, who sees people the way you do." Before Lydia could respond, there was a knock on the door. A nurse poked her head in. "Miss Hayes, I hate to interrupt, but we need to run some more tests." Lydia stood immediately. "I should get back to work anyway." "I'm so glad you're feeling better, Eleanor." Eleanor squeezed her hand. "Will you come visit me again? Please. Your company means more to me than you know." "I will," Lydia promised. "I'll stop by tomorrow." As Lydia left the VIP wing and returned to her floor, she felt lighter somehow. There was something special about Eleanor, something that made Lydia feel seen and valued in a way that went beyond gratitude. She had no idea that tomorrow's visit would change everything, that tomorrow she would meet the son Eleanor had spoken about with such love and concern. Tomorrow, Lydia's carefully constructed, predictable life would intersect with a world she'd never imagined being part of, and nothing would ever be the same again. The next day, Lydia finished her regular shift and stopped by Eleanor's room as promised. She'd brought a small bouquet of flowers from the hospital gift shop. Nothing fancy, just cheerful daisies that had made her smile. She knocked on the door and heard Eleanor's voice call out, "Come in." But when Lydia opened the door, she froze. Eleanor wasn't alone. Standing beside her bed, dressed in an expensive charcoal suit that probably cost more than Lydia made in 3 months, was a tall man with dark hair, strong features, and eyes that were somehow both intense and gentle. He turned when Lydia entered, and for a moment, they just stared at each other. "Lydia," Eleanor said, her face brightening. "Perfect timing. I want you to meet my son. Lucas, this is the angel I told you about, the young woman who saved my life." Lucas Hayes stepped forward, and Lydia noticed everything about him in that suspended moment. The way he moved with unconscious confidence, the way his suit fit perfectly across his broad shoulders, the way his eyes, a striking grey blue, seemed to see right through her. He extended his hand. "Miss Lydia, I can't thank you enough for what you did for my mother." His voice was deep, refined, but warm. Lydia shook his hand, very aware of how rough her own hands were from constant washing and sanitizing, how plain her scrubs looked next to his obvious wealth. "I'm just glad I could help," Lydia said, finding her voice. "Your mother is a remarkable woman." "She is," Lucas agreed, but he hadn't let go of her hand yet. "And apparently, so are you. My mother hasn't stopped talking about you since I arrived this morning." Finally, he released her hand, and Lydia stepped back, suddenly feeling very aware of herself. "I just brought some flowers," Lydia said, holding up the modest bouquet. It looked pathetic next to the elaborate arrangements that filled the room. "They're perfect," Eleanor said warmly, "much more cheerful than these stuffy formal ones. Put them right here on my bedside table where I can see them." Lydia did as asked, trying not to feel self-conscious under Lucas's gaze. She could feel him watching her, studying her, and it made her skin warm in a way that had nothing to do with the temperature of the room. "How are you feeling today?" Lydia asked Eleanor, focusing on why she was actually there. "Much better, thanks to the excellent care I've been receiving. The doctors say I can probably go home in a few days." "That's wonderful news." "Lucas just arrived from Tokyo," Eleanor continued. "He flew back the moment he heard what happened, dropped everything and came straight here." Lucas looked slightly embarrassed. "Of course I did. You're my mother." "He's a good boy," Eleanor said, patting his hand, "even if he does work too much." "Mother," Lucas said with gentle exasperation. Lydia couldn't help but smile at their dynamic. Despite his obvious wealth and power, Lucas was still a son being lovingly scolded by his mother. "I should let you two have your time together," Lydia said, backing toward the door. "I just wanted to check in." "Will you come back tomorrow?" Eleanor asked hopefully. Lydia hesitated. Something told her she should create some distance, that getting more involved with this family was complicated. But Eleanor's hopeful expression made it impossible to say no. "I'll try," Lydia said. "If I can." "Please do," Eleanor said. Then, with a mischievous glint in her eye, "Lucas will probably still be here. He's staying at least a week to make sure I'm settled." Lucas shot his mother a look that suggested he knew exactly what she was doing, but he didn't contradict her. As Lydia left the room, she could have sworn she felt Lucas's eyes following her all the way to the door. In the hallway, she took a deep breath, trying to settle the strange flutter in her chest. Lucas Hayes was handsome, yes, and surprisingly kind for someone of his obvious status, but he existed in a completely different world from hers. Whatever Eleanor might be hoping, nothing was going to happen between her and Lucas Hayes. Lydia was a nurse, barely making ends meet, raising her teenage brother in a modest apartment. Lucas was a millionaire CEO who probably dated models and socialites. They had nothing in common except Eleanor. Still, as Lydia returned to her floor to finish her shift, she couldn't quite get the image of his grey-blue eyes out of her mind, or the way his voice had sounded when he thanked her, or the warmth of his hand when they'd shaken. "Stop it," she told herself firmly. "This is ridiculous. He's out of your league, and you have enough on your plate without adding impossible fantasies." But her heart didn't seem to be listening to logic, and back in Eleanor's room, Eleanor was giving her son a knowing look. "She's lovely, isn't she?" Eleanor said innocently. Lucas sat down in the chair Lydia had vacated, trying to ignore the knowing gleam in his mother's eye. "She seems very kind," he said carefully. "Kind, compassionate, selfless, and beautiful," Eleanor added. "Did you notice how she didn't even hesitate when I asked her to visit again? Most people would be intimidated by all this." She gestured at the luxurious room. "Mother, what are you doing?" "I'm not doing anything," Eleanor said, far too innocently. "I'm simply noting that the young woman who saved my life is exactly the kind of person this world needs more of, and exactly the kind of person you need in your life." Lucas shook his head, smiling despite himself. "You're incorrigible." "I'm practical," Eleanor corrected. "You're 34 years old, Lucas. When was the last time you went on a date with someone who didn't care about your money or your connections? That's not fair, isn't it? Lydia didn't know who I was when she helped me. She didn't know you existed. She stopped to help a sick old woman because it was the right thing to do. Do you know how rare that is? Lucas did know. He'd seen too many people in his life who only did things when there was something to gain. Even his relationships had been calculated, strategic. Women who wanted access to his world, his status, his wealth. But Lydia had looked at him with no recognition, no calculation. Just a kind woman who'd brought flowers to check on a patient. She's probably not interested, Lucas said. Eleanor laughed. You didn't see the way she looked at you when she thought no one was watching. Trust me, son. There's something there. Lucas wanted to argue, but he couldn't, because the truth was, he'd felt it too. That spark of connection when their eyes met, the reluctance to let go of her hand, the pull to learn more about the woman who'd saved his mother's life. He'd been thinking about her since his mother first told him the story. A nurse who'd stopped when everyone else walked by, who'd called for help, ridden in the ambulance, stayed to make sure a stranger was okay. And now that he'd met her, seen her gentle compassion and humble grace, he couldn't get her out of his mind. But his mother was right about one thing. His world and Lydia's were very different, and the last thing he wanted was to make her uncomfortable or take advantage of the situation. Still, as he sat with his mother that afternoon, listening to her talk about her recovery and her plans, Lucas found his thoughts drifting back to the young nurse with the kind eyes and the warm smile. Maybe, just maybe, he'd find a reason to be there tomorrow when Lydia came to visit. Just to thank her properly, of course. Nothing more than that. At least, that's what he told himself. If you're already invested in Lydia and Lucas's story, make sure you hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what you think is going to happen next. And don't forget to subscribe. Over the next week, Lydia found herself visiting Eleanor's room almost every day. It started as a professional courtesy, checking in on a patient she'd helped, but it quickly became something more. Eleanor was warm, engaging, and genuinely interested in Lydia's life in a way that felt almost maternal. And Lucas was always there. He'd extended his stay, claiming he wanted to make sure his mother was fully recovered before he returned to work. But Lydia couldn't help but notice how their conversations always seemed to stretch longer than necessary, how he'd time his visits to Eleanor's room to coincide with Lydia's breaks, how his face would light up just slightly when she walked through the door. On the fourth day, Lydia arrived to find Lucas sitting alone in Eleanor's room. Eleanor had been taken down for some follow-up tests, and he was working on his laptop, his suit jacket draped over the chair, his sleeves rolled up to reveal strong forearms. He looked up when she entered, and a smile crossed his face that made her heart do something complicated in her chest. "Lydia," he said, closing his laptop, "my mother's downstairs for an echocardiogram. She should be back in about 30 minutes. Lydia should have left, should have said she'd come back later, but instead, she found herself stepping into the room. "How's she doing?" Lydia asked. "Remarkably well," Lucas said. "The doctors are amazed at her recovery. They said if you hadn't gotten her here when you did, the outcome would have been very different. I'm just glad I was there at the right time." Lucas studied her for a moment, and Lydia felt exposed under his gaze, like he was seeing past all her carefully constructed walls. "Can I ask you something?" Lucas said. "Why did you stop? When everyone else walked by, what made you different?" Lydia thought about it, choosing her words carefully. "I grew up in a neighborhood where people looked out for each other," she said finally. "My mother used to say that we were all just one bad day away from needing help ourselves. She taught me that turning away from someone in need was the same as being the person who hurt them." She paused, remembering. "When my parents died, I was 19 with an 8-year-old brother to raise. I didn't know how I was going to make it, but people showed up. Neighbors brought food. My aunt helped with childcare. My nursing school professors gave me extensions on assignments. Complete strangers saw me struggling and helped." Lydia met Lucas's eyes. "Your mother wasn't just a sick old lady to me. She was someone's daughter, someone's mother, someone who mattered. How could I walk by?" Lucas was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. "I've spent my entire adult life in boardrooms and business meetings, surrounded by people who only see transactions and opportunities. I can't remember the last time I met someone who saw people the way you do. I'm not special, Lydia said. I just do what anyone should do. But they don't, Lucas said firmly. Hundreds of people walked past my mother that night. Only you stopped. That makes you special, whether you want to acknowledge it or not. The intensity in his gaze made Lydia's breath catch. She looked away, suddenly feeling vulnerable in a way she didn't know how to handle. Can I ask you something? Lydia said, needing to shift the conversation. Anything. What's it like, your world, I mean? The wealth, the business, all of it. Lucas leaned back in his chair, considering the question. Lonely, he said after a moment, surprising her with his honesty. My father built Hayes Properties from nothing. He came from poverty, worked 3 jobs, saved every penny, and eventually bought his first property. He taught me that success required sacrifice, focus, and never letting emotions cloud your judgment. Cloud. He looked out the window at the city skyline. I've spent the last 12 years running the company, growing it, proving I was worthy of the legacy he left, and I've been successful by every measurable standard. We've tripled our portfolio, expanded into international markets, made more money than I could spend in 3 lifetimes. He turned back to Lydia, but somewhere along the way, I forgot how to connect with people. Everyone wants something from me. Access, money, connections, opportunities. I can't remember the last time someone looked at me and just saw Lucas, not Lucas Hayes, CEO. Lydia's heart ached at the weariness in his voice. That sounds exhausting. It is, Lucas admitted, which is why meeting you has been so refreshing. You didn't know who I was. You didn't care about my money or my company. You just saw a son worried about his mother. I still don't care about those things, Lydia said softly. Lucas smiled, and it transformed his entire face, making him look younger, lighter. I know. That's what makes you so extraordinary. Before Lydia could respond, the door opened, and Eleanor was wheeled back in by a nurse. Her face lit up when she saw both of them there. Oh, wonderful. My 2 favorite people in the same room. Have you been keeping each other company? We have, Lucas said, standing to help the nurse settle his mother back into bed. Eleanor looked between them with barely concealed delight. Lydia, dear, you really should stay for lunch. Lucas was just about to order from that lovely Italian place down the street. You'll join us, won't you? Lydia hesitated. She should say no, should maintain professional boundaries. But the hopeful look on Eleanor's face, combined with the quiet plea in Lucas's eyes, made it impossible to refuse. Just for a little while, Lydia agreed. I have to be back on the floor in an hour. That lunch turned into another the next day, and coffee the day after that. Always with Eleanor present, always under the guise of keeping the elderly woman company during her recovery. But the truth was becoming increasingly obvious to all 3 of them. Lucas and Lydia were drawn to each other in a way that transcended logic or practicality. They talked about everything. Lucas told her about growing up with immense pressure to succeed, about losing his father and feeling the weight of that legacy crushing him, about relationships that had failed because they were based on what he could provide rather than who he was. Lydia shared her struggles raising Marcus, the fear that she wasn't good enough, that she was failing him, the exhaustion of working multiple shifts, the constant worry about money, the dreams she'd deferred because survival took precedence. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, the space between them began to shrink. A week after they'd first met, Lucas asked Lydia if she'd take a walk with him in the hospital gardens. It was a beautiful spring evening, the air finally losing its winter chill, and Lydia agreed. They walked side by side along the paved paths, surrounded by blooming flowers and the soft sound of a fountain. For a while, neither of them spoke, just enjoying the peaceful moment away from the hospital's fluorescent lights and constant activity. My mother's being discharged tomorrow, Lucas said finally. I know, Lydia said. Dr. Chen told me. That's wonderful news. It is, Lucas agreed. But it also means I'll be returning to work, getting back to my life. Lydia felt something heavy settle in her chest. Of course, this bubble they'd been living in, these daily conversations and shared meals, had always had an expiration date. Lucas had a company to run, A world to return to that didn't include a nurse who worked at a public hospital. That makes sense, Lydia said, keeping her voice neutral. I'm sure you have a lot to catch up on. Lucas stopped walking and turned to face her. In the fading sunlight, his eyes looked more blue than grey, and the expression on his face made Lydia's heart race. Lydia, I don't want this to end. What do you mean? These conversations, this connection. I don't want to just go back to my life and pretend the last week didn't happen. Lydia's breath caught. Lucas, I know this is complicated, Lucas said quickly. I know we come from different worlds, but I haven't felt this way about anyone in, maybe ever. You make me want to be better. You remind me of why any of this matters. Lydia's heart was pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. I'm a nurse who can barely pay my bills, she said quietly. You're a millionaire CEO. What kind of relationship could we possibly have? An honest one, Lucas said. A real one. One based on who we are, not what we have. He took a step closer. I'm not asking you to change your life or give up anything. I'm just asking if you'd be willing to see where this goes. Have dinner with me. Not at the hospital, not with my mother as a buffer. Just you and me. Lydia wanted to say yes, more than she'd wanted anything in a long time. But fear held her back. Fear of getting hurt. Fear of being out of her depth. Fear of what people would say. People will talk, she said. They'll say terrible things. About me, about us, about why you're with me. Let them talk, Lucas said fiercely. I don't care what anyone thinks. The only opinion that matters is yours. My brother, Lydia said. Marcus. He's been through so much. I can't bring someone into his life who might not stay. Lucas's expression softened. Then let me meet him. Let me show you both that I'm serious about this. Lydia looked up at him, at this man who could have anyone, who was choosing her, and felt something inside her shift. Maybe it was time to stop being afraid. Maybe it was time to take a chance on something good, even if it terrified her. Okay, she whispered. Okay? Lucas's face lit up with hope. Okay, we can try. Slowly. I'm not making any promises beyond that. Lucas smiled, that transformative smile that made him look like a different person entirely. Slowly is perfect. I'll take whatever you're willing to give. He reached out and gently took her hand, and Lydia felt the warmth of his touch spread through her entire body. Thank you, Lucas said softly, for taking a chance on me. Thank you for seeing me, Lydia replied. They stood there in the garden as the sun set, holding hands, both of them aware that they were standing at the beginning of something that could either be wonderful or heartbreaking. But for the first time in years, Lydia was willing to take that risk. The next evening, Eleanor was discharged from the hospital. Lydia stopped by to say goodbye, bringing a small care package of things Eleanor might need during her recovery at home. Oh, my dear, Eleanor said, pulling Lydia into a gentle hug. You've been such a blessing to me. I don't know how to thank you. You don't need to thank me, Lydia said. I'm just so glad you're feeling better. Eleanor pulled back, holding Lydia's hands in hers. Lucas told me he asked you to dinner. I hope I didn't overstep by encouraging him, but I've never seen him this way about anyone. You didn't overstep, Lydia assured her. But Eleanor, I need you to know something. I'm not from your world. I don't know how to navigate all of this, and I'm scared that I'm going to mess it up or get hurt or hurt him. Eleanor's expression was infinitely kind. My dear girl, do you know how my husband and I met? Lydia shook her head. I was a school teacher. Robert was a janitor at the school where I worked. My parents were horrified when I started dating him. They wanted me to marry a doctor or a lawyer, someone suitable. They said Robert would never amount to anything. Eleanor smiled at the memory. But Robert saw me, really saw me, and I saw him. We built our life together from nothing. And yes, he eventually became successful, but that was never what mattered. What mattered was that we chose each other every single day. She squeezed Lydia's hands. Don't let fear keep you from something beautiful, and don't let anyone make you feel like you're not good enough. You saved my life, Lydia. You have a heart that sees people, that cares without expecting anything in return. That's worth more than all the money in the world. Lydia felt tears sliding down her cheeks. Thank you, she whispered. Come visit me, Eleanor said. Once I'm settled at home, I'd love to have you, and bring that brother of yours. Lucas told me about him. I'd like to meet the young man you've worked so hard to raise. I will, Lydia promised. That Saturday, Lucas picked Lydia up for their first official date. She'd agonized over what to wear, finally settling on a simple black dress that Marcus had assured her looked nice. When she opened the door and saw Lucas standing there in dark jeans and a casual button-down shirt, looking more relaxed than she'd ever seen him, her nervousness eased slightly. "You look beautiful," Lucas said, and the sincerity in his voice made her blush. "Thank you. You look nice too." Marcus appeared behind Lydia, arms crossed, wearing his best protective little brother expression, despite being 4 inches taller than his sister. "You must be Marcus," Lucas said, extending his hand. "I've heard a lot about you." Marcus shook his hand, sizing him up. "Take care of my sister," Marcus said. "She doesn't get out much. She's always working or taking care of me." "I will," Lucas promised. "And Marcus, your sister talks about you all the time. She's incredibly proud of you." Marcus's stern expression softened slightly. "She's pretty great," he admitted. "I know," Lucas said, looking at Lydia with an expression that made her heart flutter. Lucas had chosen a small, family-owned restaurant in a quiet neighborhood, nothing ostentatious or showy. They sat at a corner table, and for the first time, it was just the two of them, with no hospitals, no sick mothers, nothing but honest conversation and genuine connection. Lucas asked about her childhood, her parents, her dreams. Lydia found herself opening up about things she rarely discussed. Her love of literature, her secret hope to maybe go back to school someday for a master's degree in nursing education, her fear that she was somehow failing Marcus despite her best efforts. "You're not failing him," Lucas said firmly. "You've given him stability, love, and a role model who shows him what integrity looks like. That's everything." "Sometimes I worry it's not enough," Lydia admitted. "I can't give him the opportunities other kids have. No fancy vacations, no expensive electronics, no college fund." Lucas reached across the table and took her hand. "My father grew up with nothing, absolutely nothing. What his mother gave him was love, work ethic, and the belief that he was capable of more. That's what you're giving, Marcus. That's what matters." Lydia felt the knot of worry in her chest loosen slightly. They talked for hours, long after their food was finished, neither of them wanting the evening to end. Lucas told her about his travels, the places he'd been for business but had never really seen because he was always in meetings or conference calls. Lydia told him about the neighborhood where she grew up, the community garden her mother had helped maintain, the library where she'd spent countless hours as a kid. When Lucas finally drove her home, he walked her to her apartment door like a gentleman from another era. "I had an amazing time tonight," he said. "So did I," Lydia admitted. "Can I see you again? Soon?" Lydia smiled. "I'd like that." Lucas hesitated, then leaned in slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away. When she didn't, he kissed her softly, gently, a kiss full of promise and respect, and something that felt a lot like hope. When they pulled apart, Lydia was smiling. "Good night, Lucas." "Good night, Lydia." As she walked into her apartment, Marcus was waiting on the couch, pretending to do homework but clearly having been watching through the window. "So?" he asked. "How was it?" Lydia sat down next to him, still feeling the warmth of Lucas's kiss on her lips. "It was really good, Marcus. Really, really good." Marcus studied her face, seeing something there that made him smile. "You like him?" "I do," Lydia admitted. "Is that okay?" Marcus thought about it, then nodded. "Yeah, it's okay. You deserve to be happy, sis. You've spent 7 years taking care of me. Maybe it's time someone took care of you." Lydia pulled him into a hug, grateful beyond words for this kid who'd grown into such a thoughtful young man. "I love you, you know that." "Love you too," Marcus said. "Even when you get all mushy about some rich dude." Lydia laughed, swatting his arm. But as she got ready for bed that night, she couldn't stop smiling. For the first time in years, she was allowing herself to hope for something beyond just survival, something beautiful, something real. And that hope felt like the most precious gift she'd ever received. Over the next month, Lydia and Lucas's relationship deepened. He took her to small concerts, art galleries, quiet bookstores. She introduced him to her favorite diner, the community center where she volunteered occasionally, the park where she and Marcus used to play as kids. Lucas met Marcus properly, taking him to a basketball game and talking to him about school, about his dreams of becoming an engineer. He never talked down to Marcus, never tried to buy his affection with expensive gifts. He just showed up, consistently, genuinely interested in getting to know the most important person in Lydia's life. And slowly, Marcus began to trust him. Lydia visited Eleanor at her estate, a beautiful home that was surprisingly warm despite its size. Eleanor welcomed her like family, showing her photos of Lucas as a child, sharing stories about her late husband, making Lydia feel valued and seen. "I've never seen Lucas this happy," Eleanor confided one afternoon over tea. "You've given him something I was afraid he'd lost forever, the ability to be himself." But not everything was perfect. The first time Lucas invited Lydia to a business function, a charity gala for a cause his company supported, she felt the weight of the differences between their worlds. The other attendees were polished, sophisticated, wearing designer gowns and expensive jewelry. Lydia had borrowed a dress from a co-worker, and even though Lucas assured her she looked stunning, she felt out of place. Women who clearly knew Lucas gave her assessing looks, their eyes cataloging everything about her and finding her wanting. A few made pointed comments within her hearing about Lucas's interesting choice of date. Lydia excused herself to the restroom at one point, needing a moment to breathe. She stood at the sink, staring at her reflection, fighting the voice in her head that said she didn't belong. The door opened, and a woman in a stunning red gown walked in. She looked familiar, and Lydia realized she'd seen her talking to Lucas earlier in the evening. "So you're the nurse," the woman said, her tone making it sound like an insult. "I'm Victoria. Lucas and I dated a few years ago." "Nice to meet you," Lydia said politely, turning to leave. "Word of advice," Victoria said, blocking her path. "Enjoy it while it lasts. Lucas has a type, and you're definitely not it. This little phase he's going through will end, and when it does, you'll be right back where you started. Alone and insignificant." The words hit harder than they should have. Lydia had been thinking the same things herself, late at night when her insecurities got loud. "Excuse me," Lydia said, pushing past her. She found Lucas in the ballroom, talking to a group of business associates. When he saw her face, he immediately excused himself. "What happened?" he asked, concern flooding his features. "Nothing," Lydia said. I think I need to go home." Lucas didn't argue. He took her hand and led her out of the gala, not caring about the whispers or the stares. He drove her home in silence, sensing that she needed space to process. At her apartment door, Lydia finally spoke. "That woman, Victoria, she said this is just a phase, that you'll get bored and move on." Lucas's jaw tightened. "Victoria is bitter because I ended things when I realized she was more interested in my bank account than in me. Don't listen to her." "But what if she's right?" Lydia said, voicing her deepest fear. "What if this is all just novelty to you? What if I'm just different enough to be interesting for a while, but eventually you'll want someone from your world?" Lucas cupped her face in his hands, making her look at him. "Lydia, listen to me. You are not a phase. You are not a novelty. You are the most genuine, compassionate, incredible person I have ever met, and I am falling in love with you." Lydia's breath caught. "You're what?" "I'm falling in love with you," Lucas repeated. "Maybe I already have fallen, and I know that's terrifying. I know you have every reason to protect yourself, but I'm asking you to trust me, to trust this." Tears were streaming down Lydia's face. "I'm scared," she whispered. "So am I," Lucas admitted. "I've never felt this way about anyone, but that doesn't make it less real. It makes it more important." Lydia looked at this man who could have anyone, who was choosing her, and made a decision. She was done letting fear run her life. "I'm falling in love with you too," she said. Lucas's face transformed with joy. He kissed her, deep and tender and full of promise. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were smiling through their tears. "We're going to make this work," Lucas said. "Whatever it takes." "Whatever it takes," Lydia echoed, and standing there in the hallway of her modest apartment building, holding each other close, they both believed it. If you're feeling everything Lydia and Lucas are going through, Hit that like button and let me know in the comments what you think is going to happen next, and make sure you're subscribed. The next few months were both wonderful and challenging. Lucas and Lydia settled into a rhythm, finding ways to bridge their different worlds. Lucas started spending time in Lydia's neighborhood, meeting her friends from the hospital, joining her and Marcus for simple dinners at home. Lydia slowly grew more comfortable in Lucas's world, learning to navigate the charity events and business dinners with grace, though she never pretended to be anything other than who she was. Eleanor became a constant presence in their lives, a source of wisdom and encouragement. She adored Lydia and treated Marcus like the grandson she'd never had, helping him with college applications and talking to him about his future with genuine interest. But the scrutiny didn't stop. The media had gotten wind of their relationship, and suddenly Lydia found herself the subject of gossip columns and online speculation. Some of it was merely curious, but much of it was cruel. People questioned her motives, suggested she was a gold digger, made racist comments disguised as concern about their compatibility. Lucas did his best to shield her from it, but it was impossible to hide completely. One particularly vicious article referred to her as the charity case nurse who managed to snag a millionaire, and speculated on how long it would be before Lucas came to his senses. Lydia tried not to let it get to her, but the constant pressure was wearing. She started second-guessing everything. When Lucas offered to help Marcus with his college applications, she wondered if people would say Marcus only got in because of connections. When he wanted to take her on a weekend trip, she worried about what her co-workers would think. The breaking point came 3 months into their relationship. Lucas had been invited to speak at a major business conference in San Francisco, and he'd asked Lydia to come with him. She'd managed to get the time off work, excited about the trip and the chance to see a new city. But the night before they were supposed to leave, Lydia's car broke down. The mechanic gave her an estimate that made her stomach drop. $2,000, money she didn't have, not with rent due and Marcus needing new shoes and the electric bill higher than usual because of the summer heat. She sat in her apartment that evening, staring at the estimate, feeling the weight of her reality crushing down on her. She could ask Lucas for help. She knew he'd give her the money without hesitation, but the thought made her feel sick. It would confirm everything the critics said about her, that she was with him for his money, that she couldn't take care of herself. When Lucas called to confirm their plans for the next day, Lydia made a decision. "I can't go," she said. "What? Why not? Did something happen at work? My car broke down. I need to get it fixed, and I can't afford to take the time off right now." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Lydia, let me help. I can have my mechanic look at it, or I can arrange for a car service to get you to work while it's being repaired." "No," Lydia said, more sharply than she intended. "I can handle it myself." "I know you can handle it yourself," Lucas said gently, "but you don't have to. That's what being in a relationship means. We help each other." "It's different for you," Lydia said, frustration bleeding into her voice. "You don't understand what it's like to have people constantly questioning whether you're with someone for the right reasons. If I let you pay for my car, if I let you solve my problems with your money, I'm just proving them right. I don't care what they think." "Well, I do," Lydia said, her voice rising. "I care that people think I'm using you. I care that every time you do something nice for me, someone writes an article speculating about my motives. I care that I can't just accept help without it becoming proof that I'm a gold digger." Lucas was quiet for a long moment. "So what are you saying, that we can't be together because I have money and you don't?" "I'm saying I don't know how to navigate this," Lydia said, exhaustion seeping through her words. "I don't know how to be with you without losing myself or proving everyone right about me. Lydia, please, let's talk about this in person. Don't make any decisions when you're upset." But Lydia was already spiraling, all her fears and insecurities overwhelming her. "Maybe we need some space," she said quietly. "Maybe we rushed into this without really thinking it through." "I don't need space," Lucas said, his voice tight with emotion. "I need you, but if that's what you want, I'll respect it." After they hung up, Lydia sat in the dark, crying, wondering if she'd just made the biggest mistake of her life. But the fear was too loud, the pressure too much. She needed time to think, to figure out how to be with someone like Lucas without losing who she was. Marcus found her there an hour later, still sitting in the dark. "What happened?" he asked, turning on the light. Through tears, Lydia explained everything. The car, the article, the fight with Lucas. Marcus listened, then sat down next to her. "Sis, can I say something without you getting mad?" Lydia nodded. "I think you're scared. And I get it. After Mom and Dad died, you had to be strong for both of us. You couldn't let anyone help because there was no one to help. You had to do everything yourself." He took her hand. "But Lucas isn't trying to save you or change you. He just wants to be part of your life. And yeah, he has money. But that's not why you're with him. You fell for him before you even knew who he was, remember? You fell for the guy who was worried about his mom, who listened to you, who saw you. But what if people are right?" Lydia whispered. "What if I'm just—" "Stop," Marcus interrupted. "You're the strongest person I know. You raised me by yourself while going to nursing school. You work doubles to make sure we have what we need. You stop to help sick old ladies when everyone else walks by. You're not a charity case, and you're not a gold digger. You're just a good person who fell in love with someone who happens to be rich." He squeezed her hand. "Don't let other people's opinions ruin something good. Don't let fear make you push away someone who makes you happy." Lydia looked at her little brother, who wasn't so little anymore, and realized he'd become wise beyond his years. "When did you get so smart?" she asked, managing a small smile. "I learned from the best," Marcus said. The next morning, Lydia called Lucas. He answered on the first ring. "I'm sorry," she said before he could speak. "I was scared and overwhelmed, and I took it out on you." "You don't have to apologize," Lucas said. "I understand the pressure you're under. I just wish I could make it easier. Can we talk? In person?" "I'll come to you. Give me 20 minutes." When Lucas arrived, Lydia opened the door to find him looking as tired as she felt, like he hadn't slept either. "Come in," she said. They sat on her worn couch, the same couch where they'd had their first real conversation, where he'd met Marcus, where they'd laughed and talked and built something real. "I was wrong last night," Lydia said. "Not about being scared, but about pushing you away because of it. Marcus made me realize something. I've spent so long having to do everything alone that I forgot what it's like to have a partner." She took his hand. "You offering to help with my car wasn't about money. It was about caring, about wanting to make my life easier because you love me. And I'm sorry I made you feel like that was wrong." Lucas brought her hand to his lips, kissing it gently. "I can't imagine what it's like dealing with the scrutiny, the comments, the assumptions. But Lydia, I don't want you to have to face it alone. We're in this together." "I know," Lydia said, "and I'm trying to remember that. But I need you to understand something. I'm always going to struggle with accepting help. It's not about you. It's about me needing to feel like I'm pulling my own weight." "What if we found a compromise?" Lucas suggested. "What if, when you need help, you let me be there for you the way you'd be there for me? Not as a benefactor, but as a partner." Lydia thought about it. "I can try. It won't be easy." "Nothing worth having is easy," Lucas said, "but we'll figure it out together." He pulled her close, and Lydia let herself lean into him, feeling the solid warmth of his presence. "I love you," she whispered. "I love you too, so much." They sat there for a long time, holding each other, both of them understanding that relationships took work, that love meant being vulnerable, that building something real required them both to be brave. The following weeks brought a shift in how they approached their relationship. Lucas was more mindful of Lydia's need for independence, while Lydia worked on accepting help without seeing it as a weakness. They found a balance that worked for them, supporting each other without either feeling diminished. Lucas started spending more time with Marcus, becoming a mentor and friend. He helped Marcus prepare for his SATs, shared stories about his own college experience, and encouraged Marcus's dreams without trying to pave an easy path for him. Eleanor remained a constant source of support and wisdom. She invited Lydia and Marcus to family dinners, making them feel like they belonged, while also gently coaching Lydia on how to handle the social aspects of Lucas's world without losing herself. "The secret," Eleanor told her one afternoon, "is to remember that their opinions don't define you. You know who you are. Lucas knows who you are. That's what matters." 6 months into their relationship, Lucas took Lydia back to the intersection where she'd first saved Eleanor's life. It was a cold evening again, similar to that first night, though not raining. "Do you remember this spot?" Lucas asked. "Of course," Lydia said. "This is where everything started." Lucas took her hands, and in the glow of the streetlight, Lydia saw something in his expression that made her heart race. "This is where you taught me what real kindness looks like," Lucas said. "This is where you stopped when everyone else walked by. This is where you saw a person in need and didn't think about what it would cost you or what you might gain. You just helped." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Lydia's breath caught. "That moment changed my life, Lydia. Not just because you saved my mother, though I'll be eternally grateful for that, but because it showed me what I'd been missing, what I'd been looking for without knowing it." Lucas got down on one knee right there on the sidewalk, and Lydia felt tears already streaming down her face. "You've shown me that the richest life isn't measured in money or success. It's measured in moments like these, in kindness freely given, in love that sees past surfaces to the heart beneath. You've reminded me what it means to be human, to connect, to care." He opened the box, revealing a ring that was beautiful but not ostentatious, elegant in its simplicity. "Lydia, I don't want to go through life without you. I don't want to face another day where I can't call you my wife. Will you marry me?" Lydia was crying so hard she could barely see, but she nodded frantically. "Yes," she managed to choke out. "Yes, I'll marry you." Lucas slipped the ring onto her finger and stood, pulling her into his arms and kissing her, as cars drove past and people hurried by, none of them realizing they were witnessing a moment that had started with simple compassion and grown into profound love. When they finally pulled apart, both of them laughing through their tears, Lydia looked at the ring on her finger and felt a sense of rightness she'd never experienced before. "I love you," she said. "I love you too. So much." They stood there on that corner, holding each other, two people from different worlds who'd found common ground in the most unexpected way. The engagement brought a fresh wave of media attention, some of it positive, much of it still skeptical. But Lydia found she cared less now. She had Lucas, she had Marcus, she had Eleanor. She had people who loved her for exactly who she was. The rest was just noise. Planning the wedding became a family affair. Eleanor insisted on helping, but she was careful to make sure Lydia felt ownership over every decision. Marcus served as an unofficial consultant, giving his opinion on everything from flowers to music with the seriousness of a professional wedding planner. Lydia wanted something simple and meaningful, not a grand spectacle. Lucas agreed without hesitation. They decided on a small ceremony in Eleanor's garden with just close friends and family. The night before the wedding, Lydia sat with Marcus in their apartment for the last time. Tomorrow, she'd be moving into Lucas's home, starting a new chapter of her life. "You okay?" Marcus asked, noticing her reflective mood. "Yeah," Lydia said, "just thinking about how much has changed." "You deserve this, you know," Marcus said. "After everything you've done for me, everything you've sacrificed, you deserve to be happy." Lydia pulled him into a hug. "I'm so proud of you," she said. "You've grown into such an incredible person." "I had a good teacher," Marcus said. "What are you going to do with all this space when I'm gone?" Lydia teased, trying to lighten the mood. "Probably throw wild parties," Marcus deadpanned. Then he smiled. "Actually, I'm going to miss you being here. But I'm happy for you, sis. Really happy. You know you're always welcome at our place, right?" Lucas meant it when he said you're family now. "I know," Marcus said. "He's a good guy. I'm glad you found him, or that he found you. However it works." The wedding day was perfect. The weather was clear and warm. Eleanor's garden was in full bloom, and the small gathering of people who mattered most were there to celebrate. Lydia wore a simple but elegant white dress. Marcus walked her down the aisle, his eyes suspiciously bright as he placed her hand in Lucas's. The ceremony was intimate and heartfelt. Lucas's vows made everyone cry. "Lydia, you taught me that wealth isn't about what you have. It's about what you give when no one's watching. It's about stopping when everyone else walks by. It's about seeing people, really seeing them, when the world has made them invisible." His voice thick with emotion, he continued, "You saw my mother when she was invisible. You saw me beneath the CEO and the money and all the things that usually define me. You saw my heart, and I promised to spend the rest of my life seeing yours, honoring it, protecting it, cherishing it. Lydia's vows were equally moving. Lucas, you showed me that it's okay to let people in. That accepting love and support doesn't make me weak. It makes me human. You've given me a family, a home, and a love I never thought I deserved. I promise to remind you every day what really matters, to be your partner in all things, to stop for people who need help, and to never let success harden our hearts. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, the small crowd erupted in applause. Lucas kissed Lydia deeply, and in that moment, surrounded by love and joy, Lydia felt like the luckiest person alive. The reception was filled with laughter, good food, and heartfelt toasts. Eleanor spoke about the moment she'd first met Lydia, how even in her confusion and pain, she'd recognized something special in the young woman who stopped to help. Sometimes the richest hearts are found in the simplest moments, Eleanor said, raising her glass. My son found his treasure not in a boardroom, but on a rainy street corner, because one remarkable woman remembered that people matter more than schedules. To Lydia and Lucas, may their love continue to remind us all what really matters. Marcus gave a toast that had everyone laughing and crying. My sister raised me from the time I was 8 years old. She worked 2 jobs, went to nursing school, and somehow still made sure I felt loved and safe every single day. She taught me that strength isn't about doing everything alone. It's about showing up, even when it's hard, even when you're exhausted, even when everyone else walks by. He looked at Lucas. You better take care of her, man, because she's the best person I know. Lucas stood and shook Marcus's hand, pulling him into a hug. I will. I promise. As the sun set and string lights twinkled in the garden, Lucas and Lydia had their first dance as husband and wife. They swayed together, not quite in rhythm, but not quite out of it either, lost in each other. Happy? Lucas whispered. Incredibly, Lydia replied. You, more than I ever thought possible. As they danced, Lydia thought about the journey that had brought them here. A rainy evening, a sick old woman, a choice to stop when everyone else kept walking. That single moment of compassion had transformed both of their lives in ways neither could have imagined. 1 year later, Lydia stood in Eleanor's garden again, this time for a different celebration. Lucas had surprised her by establishing a foundation in her name, the Lydia Hayes Foundation for Community Healthcare. The foundation provided free medical care to underserved communities, funded nursing scholarships for students from low-income backgrounds, and supported emergency medical training programs. This is what you do, Lucas had said when he told her about it. You see people who are invisible to everyone else. This foundation will help you do that on a larger scale. The foundation's first clinic was opening in Lydia's old neighborhood, and the community had turned out in force to celebrate. Lydia's former neighbors, her co-workers from the hospital, Marcus and his friends Eleanor, and dozens of people whose lives had been touched by Lydia's work, were all there. As Lydia cut the ribbon on the new clinic, she looked around at the faces surrounding her and felt overwhelming gratitude. For Eleanor, who'd become like a mother to her. For Marcus, who'd grown into a confident young man heading to college in the fall on a full scholarship he'd earned through his own merit. For Lucas, who stood beside her always, supporting her dreams while building his own legacy of compassion. After the ceremony, as they walked through the clinic, and Lydia showed Lucas the exam rooms and the waiting area designed to be welcoming and comfortable, he pulled her aside. There's one more thing, he said, looking nervous in a way she rarely saw. What? Lucas took her hand and placed it on his heart. I know we talked about waiting a few years before starting a family, but lately I've been thinking about how much I want to build that with you. Not because we need to rush, but because I can't imagine anything more perfect than having children with you. Teaching them the values you taught Marcus, showing them what real kindness looks like. Lydia felt tears spring to her eyes. Are you saying what I think you're saying? I'm saying I'm ready when you are. To grow our family, to raise kids who stop for people who need help, to build a legacy that's about more than money. Lydia threw her arms around his neck. I'm ready too. I've been ready. I was just afraid to say it. Lucas laughed, spinning her around. We're going to be amazing parents." "We are," Lydia agreed. As they stood there in the clinic that bore her name, surrounded by evidence of how far they'd come, Lydia thought about that rainy evening a year and a half ago. She'd been tired, overwhelmed, just trying to get home, but something had made her stop. Something had made her see an elderly woman when everyone else looked away. That moment of compassion had given her everything: a family, a home, a love that transformed both of them, a platform to help others on a scale she'd never imagined. But more than that, it had proven something she'd always believed, but had sometimes doubted in her darkest moments. That kindness mattered, that seeing people, really seeing them, could change the world. That one small act of compassion could ripple outward in ways you couldn't predict. 6 months later, Lydia and Lucas gathered their family to share news. They were expecting a baby. Eleanor cried with joy. Marcus was excited about becoming an uncle, and Lydia felt a sense of completeness she'd never known was possible. She continued working at the hospital, though she'd cut back her hours to focus on the foundation. Lucas had restructured his company to be more hands-off, prioritizing family over business in a way his father never had. They volunteered together at the community clinic, Lucas rolling up his sleeves to help however he could, no longer the distant CEO, but a man engaged with the people his company's charitable foundation served. And every year on the anniversary of the day they met, Lucas and Lydia returned to that street corner. They'd stand there for a few minutes, remembering how it all started, grateful for the twist of fate that had brought them together. The baby, a girl they named Hope after the virtue that had sustained them both through their darkest times, was born on a rainy spring evening. She had Lucas's eyes and Lydia's smile, and from the moment she was placed in Lydia's arms, she was loved beyond measure. Eleanor held her granddaughter with tears streaming down her face, marveling at how one act of compassion had led to this moment, to this family, to this beautiful continuation of love. Marcus, now in his second year of college studying engineering, came home to meet his niece and couldn't stop smiling. "She's perfect," he said, holding Hope carefully as if she might break. "She is," Lydia agreed, watching her brother with her daughter and feeling her heart overflow. As the years passed, Lydia and Lucas raised Hope with the values that had brought them together. They taught her to see people, to stop when others walked by, to measure wealth not in possessions, but in compassion given and received. The foundation grew, opening clinics in 12 cities, providing scholarships to hundreds of nursing students, training thousands of people in emergency medical care. Lives were saved, families were helped, people who had been invisible were finally seen. And it all started because one exhausted nurse refused to walk by a sick old woman on a rainy evening. Because Lydia had seen Eleanor when everyone else looked away. Because sometimes the smallest acts of kindness create the biggest miracles. Because love built on compassion and genuine connection doesn't just change 2 lives. It transforms everyone it touches, rippling outward in waves of grace and hope that never truly end. If this story touched your heart, I need you to do something for me right now. Share this video with someone who needs to be reminded that their kindness matters. That stopping to help when everyone else walks by isn't weakness, it's strength. That compassion can change everything. Hit that like button if Lydia and Lucas's story reminded you that love sees no boundaries when hearts are genuine. Drop a comment and tell me what moment in their journey affected you most. Was it when Lydia first stopped to help Eleanor? When Lucas proposed at that same corner? When they opened the foundation? And if you're new to this channel, welcome to a community that believes in the power of kindness, the reality of second chances, and the beauty of love that transforms. Subscribe and turn on notifications because every week we bring you stories that restore your faith in humanity. Stories that remind you that one moment of compassion can change not just your life, but the lives of everyone around you. Thank you for watching Lydia and Lucas's journey. Thank you for believing that good people still exist, that love conquers fear, and that stopping to help someone in need is never wasted effort. Remember, you never know whose life you're changing when you choose kindness. You never know what miracles might unfold from one simple act of seeing someone when everyone else looks away. Be someone's Lydia today. Stop when others walk by. See people when the world makes them invisible. because that's how we change the world, one compassionate moment at a time. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Keep your hearts open, keep your eyes watchful for people who need help, and never, ever underestimate the power of simple human kindness. Your moment of compassion might just be the beginning of someone's miracle.